Schlapp is a former political director to President Bush and the chairman of the American Conservative Union. John Stanton is the Washington bureau chief at BuzzFeed, and Kristen Welker is NBC News White House correspondent. Well, Matt, let me start with you. I mean, and I don't know where to start exactly in this press conference. We have the clip there of him attacking Rand Paul. He also bluntly attacked Jeb Bush. I got some of this written down. He called Jeb Bush a puppet at one point. He said the last thing we need right now is another Bush. He said Jeb Bush is totally controlled by his donors. These attacks from Trump, we've seen so far, when the other candidates attack Trump, it's not helping them. What happens in the minds of Republican voters when they hear Donald Trump attacking these candidates? Is it more effective?
Look, he's connecting. He is seen as someone who's going to tell it like it is. He says the things in front of the camera that a lot of people are afraid to say and say behind the camera. And there's an authenticity to it that I think Republican primary voters are definitely connecting to.
You know, John, one thing that really jumped out at me in this, too, was the attack on Rand Paul. One of the things that Donald Trump said was that this is not the time to be weak on defense. And Donald Trump said that after he attacked and called a mistake the Iraq war. And it's fascinating to me because the only voice in the Republican Party for the last decade or so that's really been raising doubts about and criticisms of Iraq has been Rand Paul, has been his father, Ron Paul, making sort of the isolationist argument against Iraq. Now you have Donald Trump, who's making more of the sort of muscular military strength argument against Iraq. We haven't really heard this in the Republican side before, have we?
Well, I think he's actually sort of doing the same kind of thing he does with his own personal bluster, right? I mean, he's saying we shouldn't have gone to Iraq, we shouldn't be involved that much in Ukraine, but we should have this really huge military that's going to scare the hell out of everybody on earth, right? And so I think it actually is a little bit consistent with his sort of personal philosophy of like be really loud and boisterous and, you know, sort of push people around a little bit and throw your weight around, and that's kind of, it sounds like what his foreign policy would be, I guess. I mean, it sounds like.
But Kristen, the thought I have when I'm watching that is how does that resonate with Republicans? Because what we've seen with Rand Paul, what we've seen with Ron Paul, when they attack George W. Bush and the decision to go into Iraq and that war, is they're basically branded as traitors to the cause, traitors to the Republican Party. They're marginalized. They get their 10, 15, 20%, whatever it is. They never climb any higher than that. Here's Donald Trump saying this in a very different way, where he's basically saying what they believe about Rand Paul. He's calling him all sorts of names. He's saying he's way out there. He's saying he's weak on defense. But he seems to be offering Republicans a way to distance themselves from the Iraq war without necessarily being branded as traitors to the cause.
Well, that's right. And I think that is one of the reasons that he is gaining so much traction. And just taking that point a little bit further, what really stood out to me, Steve, is the fact that he said, I'm going to get along with Putin. I think Germany should be pressing Russia to get out of Ukraine. I mean, I am going to be fascinated to see how the broader Republican Party responds to that, because if you'll recall, a lot of Republicans have said President Obama should be tougher on Putin in terms of pressing him to get out of Ukraine. So that's something that could potentially alienate some Republican voters. Look, I've been talking to Republican strategists. They say they want the Republican candidates to get their Donald Trump on. And what that means is to find that authentic part of themselves to translate the message they want to get out so that they can get into this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, is that even possible, though, when we're dealing with these guys are professional politicians, and Trump is just absolutely, you know, like Jeb Bush. He says, look, the guy's raised $114 million. Do you really think that these people plopping down tens of millions of dollars aren't real control over this politician who's taken all their money? I mean, how can they show that authentic side when Trump is the sort of point of comparison?
Look, the fact is that Donald Trump is going after his adversaries for this nomination, and this is all fair game. And I think this is exactly right. Initially, a lot of these candidates thought they could just lampoon Donald Trump and they could marginalize him and make fun of him. And now they're imitating him. Because when you see polls of him getting anywhere from 10 to upwards to 30% in these polls, they're realizing he's really resonating with people. When people make fun of Donald Trump or try to marginalize him, they're actually making fun of voters, and they're marginalizing voters. That's a stupid thing for a Republican to do in this nominating process. The fact is, Carly Fiorina, Ben Carson, Donald Trump, add up how well they're doing in all these polls, and it is a blistering message coming through from Republican primary voters. Washington is broken. They want to try new candidates. They're ready for a whole new way to approach this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is so striking. You add up all of those outsiders who are performing so well, and you think back to how the stage was set for this campaign. Originally, all the talk was you got Scott Walker, a governor, you got Marco Rubio, a senator, you got Jeb Bush, a former governor. These are going to be the stars of the field. That is not where the energy is right now. That's clear. Kristen Welker, I understand you've got to run. Thank you for joining us, though, tonight. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.